Hey, welcome to Craft Central Designs. My name is Dwynn, and today I have for you 3 autumn decor piece makeovers from Autumn Decor purchased from the Dollar Tree. I love taking items from Dollar Tree and giving them a beautiful, more high-end look. I'm going to show you in this tutorial, step by step, just how I did that. Welcome back to my subscribers, and welcome to all visiting my channel today. I so much appreciate you and this platform to share my love of creativity and crafting. Please subscribe if you have not done so already, and give this video a thumbs up if you like the content. Okay, let's get busy creating the new looks for these 3 autumn decor projects. Let's take a look at the items that we will need to create these projects. These pieces I purchased at Dollar Tree. You probably have all seen these in passing through Dollar Tree. They have these chunky wood leaves, or whatever the material is that they are. They actually stand up on their side. They have these really cute rolling pin pieces. I didn't end up using that. I ended up doing just 3 projects. They have this pumpkin, which I thought really needed a makeover, but it's a nice shape and it stands up on its own. This plaque is first up. This is the first one we're going to do. It's cute, I guess, on its own, but I really thought it could look much, much better. I like the shape of the plaque, so I decided to give it a makeover. I have some autumn stencils that I purchased on Amazon. They're absolutely beautiful. I have large ones and small ones, and I intended to use this stencil on this plaque, but I ended up using a different one. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how I did both, and that way it gives you more ideas for options, how to create yours if you want to do this makeover. I have some little bits of autumn decor there, some leaves. I have some raffia, some little berries. I'm going to just trim it up a little bit with some of those florals. And pine cones, of course, always beautiful for any fall decor. I'm going to be using these little spouncers or dabbers or daubers, whatever the heck you want to call them. I'm never quite sure what to call them. But for putting on the paint on the stencil, I have plaster Waverly chalk paint, pumpkin Waverly chalk paint, and antiquing wax by Waverly. I have this gorgeous twisted cording, which I've shown you before, previous videos, that I got at Hobby Lobby. One of those ribbons is from Crafter's Square, the little pumpkin one. And these other ones, Hobby Lobby, and also Dollar Tree. I'll tell you where I got each of those when I go to make the bow. Glue sticks, of course, glue gun. Now, I have this wood round, which is exactly the size of the round plaque that's already on the piece. When you purchase it, it's 9 inches. But I wanted to use, rather than trying to pry it off, I wanted to use just another wood round, which is 9 inches as well. But I also like the idea of creating levels on the piece, so it creates a little bit of depth. That gives the piece a more interesting look rather than to have it just flat. Now, this is the point at which I thought I was going to use that pumpkin stencil that says blessed, but I didn't end up doing that. But like I said, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I did this one. There's actually so many options for this piece. You could just become so creative when doing a makeover on this piece, because it has a very nice shape to the overall plaque itself. So I'll give you a couple of options. I covered that 9-inch wood round, which I believe I got at Dollar Tree at some point in time. But I covered that, with that antiquing wax. And then I took off that little raffia bow, which was very unattractive, and I tore off the paper around that center circle. I have a little zip sander there, which I just cleaned that up and made sure it was nice and smooth before I applied paint. I have this plaster Waverly chalk paint, one of my favorites for any autumn decor. And I'm going to paint that area where I tore off the paper on that sign. I just use a sponge applicator, and I'm just going to cover that area with the plaster chalk paint. I believe that I applied 2 coats just to get a nice coverage of that plaster chalk paint. And I finished that all the way around. Now, this is the sign that I created, and honestly, I just didn't like it. Sometimes that just happens when you're crafting. You just do something, you go, I'm not feeling it. So I went to a plan B, which I ended up absolutely loving. And I decided to do this beautiful stencil pumpkin that I got in this pack of stencils that I got on Amazon. And I'll put the store that I got them in the description box. I had another wood round in my stash. It's 7 inches. And I decided to create even more depth to that piece by placing that stencil on that wood round and placing it on top of that Hello Fall sign that came on that plaque. So I painted that also in plaster, but additionally I covered up that design that was on the original plaque, because I didn't want any of that design that came on there, because I was creating all of my own new design. I have this pumpkin Waverly chalk paint, and I am going to, my paint is dry on that wood round, that 7-inch wood round, and now I'm going to stencil on this really beautiful pumpkin. You'll see how it turns out. It's very, very pretty. So I did the actual pumpkin in that Waverly pumpkin chalk paint, and then I did the stem in antiquing wax, I believe. Yes, I did. So I just dab my paint on. This is the way I like to do my stencils. I find that I have less bleeding when I pull the stencil up if I do it this way. Plus, I kind of like just the more of a soft look to the stencil application. And the thing is that if you do it this way, once you pull up your stencil, if you have any lines that aren't really defined or crisp, you can go around with just a little paintbrush with a fine tip and clean up any lines. Stencils can be tricky sometimes, in that you can get the bleeding where the lines of the stencil are not, super well defined. Usually that occurs if you don't have like a real good adherence of the stencil to the piece. That's why I tape mine down and press it down as much as I can when I'm doing this stenciling. And I go around and I get being very careful not to cover up any of the stem. This pack of stencils had one beautiful pumpkin stencil after another. So many pretty ones. It was hard to decide. So it's really worth purchasing on Amazon because you could do many beautiful projects with just one package of the stencils. And here I have the Waverly antiquing wax, and I'm just doing the stem. And dabbing that on, just the same as I did the pumpkin. I used a little bit of a smaller sponsor for that. They come in a multi-pack where you can get different sizes. Most everyone carries them. And that turned out so pretty. I debated about bringing the all of that area where the comes off of the stem down into the pumpkin, but I ended up wanting to keep that scrolling down on the pumpkin, if that made any sense at all. You'll see what I mean if you look at the picture. What I think they call them tendrils. I didn't want to bring those down into the pumpkin because I wanted the scrolling. Okay, so we have that area around the 7-inch sign that I wanted to add some color to that piece. So I just went around the edge with that pumpkin Waverly chalk paint. And now you see I have color around that 7-inch wood plaque. Looks prettier now. Okay, so now we're going to place a bow on this piece. And I went ahead and I started the bow. I have so many bow tutorials. I will put them in the description box if you want to learn to make bows the way I do. I can certainly show you if you watch the videos. I do slow, methodical, detailed description of how I do that. So this is not a bow tutorial, but I'm just showing you a little bit of the top tier here. This particular bow was this ribbon was from Dollar Tree. It's a nice, pretty, kind of a rusty orange. And it's not wired. So always, anytime you're working with a ribbon that's not wired, it's a little bit more tricky, but also this is a thinner ribbon, so therefore it's even a little bit trickier keeping a hold of it and creating the loops. But I always do all of my loops on my bows the same way. So this is a 2-loop bow on each side with a single layer on top, and then I create a single layer going right down the center. And this is going to be a triple ribbon bow. That's going to go on this piece and really jazz it up. It's going to be very, very pretty in the end. And it's going to look nothing like it originally looked hanging on the wall at Dollar Tree. Okay, so we're going to pop that tail right through the center bow or the center loop. Watch the videos to see how I make bows, and you'll be very happy when you learn how to make beautiful triple ribbon bows for your pieces. I'm going to take all of these layers and put them together. It's always a beautiful look to combine ribbons. Those of you who follow my channel know that this is something that I always do, and how it in fact creates such visual interest to a piece. I'm going to press all of these layers firmly together so that I have no gaps between. And I'm going to place a pipe cleaner right down the center loop and attach all of those layers of bows together. And this is going to go right up on the handle of that piece. We have a beautiful plaid there, a pumpkin ribbon, which I believe I got that one at Hobby Lobby, and the plaid one I got at Hobby Lobby as well. They have beautiful autumn ribbons, but you could pick up some autumn ribbons at Dollar Tree as well. I'm just forming my loops a little bit there. And this makes a very pretty autumn bow. And there you have it. It's beautiful. And look how pretty. See how this piece is just coming alive with beauty? I just love it. Okay, so I'm going to take my glue gun and glue down that plaque. Make sure it's nice and straight on the piece. Look how pretty. I just love it. Okay, this is my favorite twisted cording that I got at Hobby Lobby. It is absolutely beautiful. I've been using it on a lot of decor pieces. And I decided that placing it around those round pieces sitting on that plaque really would dress it up, and it did. Really beautiful. So I just used hot glue, and I put a very fine strip of glue around the base of those rounds, both of them, and I put that cording all the way around. And it really added something beautiful to the piece. Now you could use just some jute twine. That would work fine as well. I just like this cord that I got at Hobby Lobby because it has orange woven through it. See how pretty? And that just really added something more to the piece. Little definition to those circles of wood there on that piece. Now I'm going to create a hanger out of that same cord, And I was trying to decide here exactly how I want to hang it because that cord is a little bit stiff. So I had to decide the best way to put that cord on there so the piece would lie flat against the wall. And that's beautiful too because that cord at the top now coordinates with the cord around the wood rounds. That looks really pretty. And as you can see there, I'm having a little trouble deciding exactly what I'm going to do with that. I did end up painting the back of that sign, by the way, because you can see it looks a little unsightly there right now. And I always like to have my pieces completely finished front and back, especially if it's for if I'm giving it to someone or I don't really sell my pieces much. Mostly I like to give them away. And that's how I decided to do it. A little bit different of a way to apply the hanger, but I decided to do it that way. And this beautiful bow, oh my gosh, looks so pretty on that piece. Now, this doesn't even look like that same piece that I picked up at Dollar Tree. See how you can take a piece and just by adding a beautiful bow and a stenciled pumpkin and some paint, how you can completely recreate a piece from Dollar Tree. They actually come out with some really awesome, I just want to call it a base for a piece, and then you could just build on that. Do you see what I mean? Look at that. And now I'm just going to trim up my tails. And I angle the ends of my ribbon rather than dovetail. That's my preference. You do what you like. All these colors of orange in this bow just really pick up that orange and the pumpkin and really complement it. Every time I look at that pumpkin, I hesitate whether I should have brought the antiquing wax of those tendrils down into the pumpkin. I may still do it. I don't know. But I just love the scrolling on the pumpkin itself, like the scrolling on the left side. So I don't know, sometimes I waver and it takes me a bit. I have to look at it for a while and then I sometimes decide later on to make a little change, but that's okay. In crafting, we do that. Sometimes our first plan isn't our end plan, if that makes sense. I'm going to add a little bit of florals to this piece. Just a bit to dress it up. I put a little pine cone in there and the other florals that you see there, the dried looking straw-like floral. And that is so pretty. And this just makes a beautiful piece to hang on the wall, perhaps in the kitchen or maybe the an entryway. Are so pretty and cost very little to make that. Okay, project number 2. This is going to be a napkin holder. Now these leaves, they're actually thick and they do have a lot of substance as far as their ability to stand on their own. And I want to say they're like an inch thick. Now, as this came with that print, which I didn't like, and it came with an initial on it for some unknown reason. I don't know why they put initials on the leaf, but I went and traced around that leaf onto the scrapbook paper that I chose with a pencil, and then I'm going to cut it out, and that is going to be Mod Podged to the top of that leaf. Now, I chose this pumpkin print, which is gorgeous. I got it at Hobby Lobby, but you can choose any autumn print and put it on there, and it would just really make a beautiful napkin holder. Now, I have these tumbling tower blocks or Jenga blocks, whatever you call them. Now, this is going to be the little piece that fits between the leaves, those block leaves that are going to be standing up to serve as a napkin holder. Now, I'll tell you, I started out with 6 blocks, but I ended up only needing 4. So I glued 2 of them together, and then another 2 together, and then just don't use the other 2 blocks. I'm telling you that now because I realized when I got to the point of putting it together, I really didn't need those other 2 blocks. So just use 4 and then adhere those together. Now these are eventually going to be painted white to go with the leaves. I chose white for this piece because the background of that pumpkin scrapbook paper was white. Now you could do these in antiquing wax as well, and then just have the autumn oranges with the antiquing wax. That would be pretty as well. Or if you use another scrapbook paper, just make your paint to coordinate with your scrapbook paper. There's so many possibilities with this piece. They also have some leaves exactly the same with like a faux leather piece that goes on the front. So you can look for that as well. It will serve the same purpose. So I used Snow White Waverly chalk paint, again, because I wanted to match the white in the background of the scrapbook paper. And now I'm going to go around and paint the sides of my leaf. I ended up covering both sides of those leaves with scrapbook paper. I decided it looked more finished if I did the back side in scrapbook paper as well. Now you see I painted it there, but I ended up, again, a little change of mind later on in the project. I ended up covering that with scrapbook paper as well, the front and the back of the leaf. But it's not really necessary to do that. You can decide on that yourself. As long as the outside, the part that's facing out of the napkin holder has the scrapbook paper, that would be fine. Again, you do you. Like there's always so many options and various ways that you can finish a project. You make that decision. I'm just here for inspiration. Now I have this very cute little stencil that I also purchased in a package from Amazon. And now I'm just taking a paintbrush because this is a much smaller stencil, so I have to be a little more precise. So I didn't want to use the spouncer. And I just dip my paintbrush in my paint, dab it off a little bit so it's not heavy with paint. Now this stencil, I had a little more trouble keeping it adhered to the... That's a 3-inch wood round, by the way. I'm sorry, I don't think I mentioned that. I think I picked up the 3-inch wood round slices at Hobby Lobby. They have their wood products 40% off pretty much every other week. So I pick up my wood pieces there when they're on sale. Now I'm just filling in the pumpkin, and the pumpkin has a stem, and then off to the sides it has some greenery. And so I ended up filling in the greenery with a green color. I was trying to match the green. There's actually little green stems in that pumpkin. And then I did the thankful in black. Now I'm going to Mod Podge my scrapbook paper to the leaves. I always just use a paper plate and a sponge applicator, which I most often pick up at Dollar Tree. Make sure you get the Mod Podge all the way out to the tips of the leaf. And then I'm just going to place my scrapbook paper on there and be sure I get it on nice and straight. And this makes a very beautiful, very colorful napkin holder. So pretty. Look how pretty that is. That's a very pretty paper. They have a number of different papers, scrapbook papers in autumn theme at Hobby Lobby. And I have them both covered. I often use a wadded up piece of saran wrap to rub across to be sure there's no bubbles. I had absolutely no problem with bubbles though on this piece. And I go all the way out to the tips to be sure that's adhered well. And there you have it. If you like, you can cover that scrapbook paper and the edges with another layer, excuse me, of Mod Podge. And now I'm going to take that, here's that piece that I said you needed to use, and just the 4 Jenga blocks. And that's going to go between those 2 leaves. But before I do that, I have my twisted cord again, and I decided to trim out around that circle with that braided cord, and that just looks so pretty. Now you'll want to put this on your piece, but be sure that you have that thankful stenciled piece straight on the leaf. You have to decide how you want to sit your leaf. Mine I did with the stem resting on the surface. You could look at the picture to see what I mean by that. Because you want your stenciled piece to be straight once it sits on the surface. So you have to pay attention to that. See how I did it? The stem resting on the surface. So then I had to have my little stenciled piece straight, if that makes sense. Now I take my little zip sander and I go around the edges, which are pretty curved and pointed, so a little tricky. But I went around the entire piece, and as I said, I ended up doing both sides. There you see it. I did one already. That's up to you. It's not really necessary. And I just went around and cleaned up all the edges. Look how pretty that is. And that leaf looks nothing like it originally did on the shelf at Dollar Tree. I love transforming pieces from Dollar Tree. So much fun. But you see there now, I just have the 4 Jenga blocks. Now that piece is going to go between those 2 leaves, and that connects the napkin holder. Now I started to use just Aleene's Techie Glue, but I ended up using wood glue. I felt that it was going to hold it a little bit better. And you see there, I started with that, but then later I felt that it wasn't really adhering well. So I ended up using wood glue, and that really worked. Okay, project number 3. This pumpkin, which I thought was not very attractive. I tore off all of the paper, and there was a little sign, a little raised lettering on there, which I pried off. And I just peel off that paper. It was as simple as that. This pumpkin stands on its own. It's about 1 inch thick. And I took my zip sander, went all over the surface of that. Ended up using the back side because it was so smooth. But I did paint the back of it as well. Now I'm starting off with a layer of plaster chalk paint. That was one of those defective sponge applicators from Dollar Tree. Yes, that happens. I took it out of the package and it wasn't even connected. So I ended up using another one. But I put a layer of plaster chalk paint all over both sides of the pumpkin. But I'm actually going to paint it the pumpkin Waverly chalk paint orange. But I wanted to get a nice even coat of chalk paint on there before I did it, so I wouldn't have to put so many layers of the pumpkin chalk paint. This just helps it to get a nice coverage. And I don't paint the stem. You'll see what I do with the stem in a bit. And I painted 1 full layer of that chalk paint all over both sides. Now I'm going to take that little Hello Fall sign, those letters, that is from Dollar Tree. Very easy to find that at Dollar Tree. I took my antiquing wax and just dabbed on that antiquing wax all over the letters. This is going to go on the front of the pumpkin. Okay, now I'm going to create a little bit of depth to the lines of the pumpkin. And if you watched my previous video on how to paint a pumpkin, you saw me do this technique, but I'm going to show you again. I take a paintbrush. I'm just going to create the lines of that, or definition of the lines of that pumpkin. And now I'm just filling in the lines, or defining the lines so that I could do this technique. But I just wanted something to go by there. Okay, so I dipped the corner of my brush in the plaster. And now I'm going to just drag it along the lines. But on the other half of my brush, I have the pumpkin. So what it's going to do is kind of blend as you go along. I tipped my brush with plaster. Then I just blend it with the pumpkin. And don't worry about making a mistake here, because you can always cover it up. Just play around with your paint, tip your brush with the plaster, drag it along the crevice to delineate the line of the pumpkin, and then just put more pumpkin on. There, you see how I just drag it along? Now I'm just going to blend it with some pumpkin. This is very easy to do. Takes a little practice to get used to blending colors, but see what a difference it makes in the piece. Just play around with your colors. You can always cover up anything that you created that was a little bit heavy. Maybe the plaster was a little heavy. That's easy to take care of. Don't be afraid of trying new techniques with paint because it can really make a piece pop and define it. This really adds to the look of this piece. So pretty. Okay, so we're going to have a little bow at the top of this piece. I used a little bit of raffia. I just pulled off about 6 strands, and I'm just going to fold it over on itself in the shape of an X. And I just make 2 loops. Fold it over onto itself, and then I make another loop there, and then I just take a little piece of wire and secure that. I think raffia on an autumn decor piece is very, very pretty. And this is going to go right on the pumpkin, and then I'm going to place the bow right on top of that. But it adds a little fall touch to the pumpkin. I do take my little raffia pieces and I fray them a little bit. I like them very stringy. Like right there, that's what I'm doing there. Just kind of separate the strands a little bit. Now this bow that I'm going to create, because it's a smaller piece, I'm just going to use narrow ribbons for that. And I'm going to use a little bit of this plaid from Hobby Lobby. It's such a pretty fall plaid. I would say those loops are maybe 3.5 to 4 inches. And I just created a 2-loop bow. This is a very small bow compared to my usual bows. If you watch follow my channel, you know I usually make big full bows with 3 loops on each side. This is a single loop on each side because the piece is small. We don't want to overwhelm it with a bow that's too big. This was a ribbon from Dollar Tree, and it has no wire. So you just create. I actually created a 2-loop bow on each side, 4 loops altogether, because this was a more narrow ribbon than the base, and I often do that if I use different width ribbons. So this one has 4 loops or 2 loops on each side, and I'm just going to connect it again with wire. Now, when I do a very tiny bow, I just use wire because I don't want the bulkiness of the pipe cleaner. And that's going to go right on top of that. And last but not least, I have a little pumpkin print bow that I believe that one was from Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to create a little top tier bow there, 2 loops on each side, and a single loop right down the center. which I'm going to secure again with a piece of wire, floral wire there. And a single loop right down the center. It's a little trickier working with very narrow ribbon as opposed to the wider ribbons that I normally use. I'm just going to take that tail, pop it right through the center. Again, watch my bow tutorials. I'll put them in the description box. I have numerous tutorials on how to make different types of bows. And it will be well worth your time to watch them so that you can make bows to create a beautiful look to your pieces that you do for the holidays. Now I'm going to put all three of those bows together and secure them. Again, I believe I used a piece of wire. Press them, all those layers together down the center, nice and firm, because you want a nice tight adherence of the bows to one another. Put the wire through the center loop, bring it around the back, and give it a couple of good twists. And this is going to be glued right to the pumpkin. Everything goes on the floor for me. That's why my dog gets covered with remnants of my crafting, because she's always underneath the table, and I always just push everything to the floor and then clean it up later. Okay. So next, we're going to wrap the stem again with this beautiful cord. Oh my gosh, that was one of my best purchases this season at Hobby Lobby. I'm using it on all kinds of things because it is just so pretty. I did end up painting. Yes, I did paint the back of my pumpkin. Right now it looks pretty horrible, but it will be that nice Waverly pumpkin color in the end. I'm pointing there. Yes, I did paint it. And now I just put a little hot glue there, and I wrapped the stem, and it looks so, so pretty. And this pumpkin stands oh, look how pretty that is. Stands very well on its own. I ended up putting the delineation lines on the back of the pumpkin. You know, probably really, in reality, if you set this pumpkin on a shelf or on a table, you're not going to be looking at the back anyway. But I'm kind of a fanatical, so I did it after I finished the piece. Okay, so I'm going to glue on my raffia, and notice I put it a little bit off to the side. Not entirely to the side, but almost in between the side and the front, if that makes sense. Because I wanted it to kind of drape over the back, but the front as well. So I think it looks pretty sitting just like that. I'm just trimming up my raffia. And I'm going to place that bow right on top of it just by gluing it on there. And onto the floor, probably onto the dog. That's where that raffia went. So I'm just going to put a dab of glue on the back of there. Watch your fingers as I have my finger protectors on there, which made no sense because I actually pressed it down with the hand with no finger protector. How much sense does that make? It's okay, I didn't get burnt. And again, I put my bow right there in that same position. that I placed the raffia. Now, obviously, we need to trim up all of the tails. I'd rather leave my tails long and have the ability to trim them up than to cut them too short. I do like my tails draping down a little bit. So you can see there how pretty that looks, and the positioning of the bow on that piece. Looks beautiful next to that braided cord. Look how pretty that ugly pumpkin is turning out to be. Oh my gosh. I love this. It's just simple, but just so pretty. And it would look so pretty in a kitchen or on a table with other autumn decor. That little package of leaves, I found it at Hobby Lobby, and I was looking for those when I did my gnome sign. If you guys follow my channel, you will remember that I was looking for something for the gnome hat. Well, I ended up finding those. They're like paper, heavy paper. These leaves, they're so pretty. I found them in the in Hobby Lobby, and kind of like the aisle with the kitchen stuff, the kitchen autumn decor stuff. Now I'm going to take Aleene's tacky glue and just put it on the back of my sign, and I'm going to put my sign on now. And I'm going to use those little dried leaves and just put a couple of those around that Hello Fall sign. And that looks really pretty in that Waverly antiquing wax color. Kind of picks up the colors in the ribbon as well as that twisted cord. Make sure you got it on straight. I put it pretty much right in the middle. And now I'm just going to do a dab of glue and put my leaves on. And they're so pretty because they kind of curl up on the edges. Really pretty. Hobby Lobby. They always have such great items to decorate and be creative with. Look how pretty. Oh my gosh, I love it. What a difference from that piece that I saw on the shelf at Dollar Tree. Oh my gosh, I love this. Now I'm going to add a little bit of florals on there. I'm going to put a couple of leaves and just use a little hot glue and place those leaves on there. I put one on each side of the bow. I also have a little pine cone right there that I decided to put on the front. Pine cones are always a beautiful touch to an autumn decor piece. Look how pretty that is. I believe I have one more little addition to that piece. I decided to put just a touch of those orange and I don't know what that color is, kind of a burgundy color berry. Just a little bit, just a touch. And I put those on each side, right by the leaves that I put on there. Sorry, banged my hand on the camera there. And that added just a nice little touch to that piece. And this is just so simple, but just so pretty. And cost so little to do. A little bit of ribbon, $1.25 pumpkin. And you have this very pretty little piece for very little money. And very little effort, actually. Didn't take long to make that. And I love it. I hope you do too. See how it stands on its own? And here we have all the pieces complete. One final look, 3 autumn makeover projects. I hope you feel inspired to create your own for the fall season. Please remember to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and leave me your comments. I appreciate your support for my channel. Next up, a fall and Halloween wreath. Okay, until next time, you all take care.